Hi, everyone. We're going to get started. My name is Hannah Beaudry. I'm a program coordinator at the Center for Ethics and Society here at the college. On behalf of myself and our executive director, Max Latona, I'd like to welcome you all today. Today's program is on entrepreneurship. It is the third and final session of the Center's Women of Influence series, which is devoted to topics relating to women's success in business and governance. The Center's mission is to use research, education, dialogue, and collaboration to help communities and organizations throughout New Hampshire address the important ethical issues that they face. We believe that entrepreneurs are crucial to the vibrancy of our state, and we're happy to have 3 women here today that contribute meaningfully to our communities. I want to thank Connie Roy-Chizovsky, Linda Johnson, and today's moderator, Dr. Dina Frutos-Bencze, for their leadership on this series. Thank you to the Women in Business Club and the Career Development Center for their help promoting this series. If you're a current student or an alum, the CDC is your go-to resource for career exploration and professional development. You can email careers@anselm.edu to connect with their team of career advisors. And the CDC also asked me to extend a special invitation to their signature event, The Art of Small Talk, which is tomorrow at 5 p.m. in the Student Center event space. Finally, thank you to our media sponsor, New Hampshire Business Review, for spreading the word about today's program. Funding for this series comes from a $2 million endowment created by the New Hampshire Secretary of State's office and the Center for Public Responsibility and Corporate Citizenship awarded to Saint Anselm College in 2013. The endowment was created from a settlement reached between the New Hampshire Securities Bureau and Tyco International in 2002 and is administered by the University of New Hampshire Foundation. Today, we're going to begin with a panel discussion followed by Q&A. After that, we invite everyone to stay for networking and refreshments. Sorry that it's already all out for you to see. I also want to note that we are recording this session with the owl here in the front row. So just so you know, if you ask any questions, it will be recorded. And it is now my pleasure to introduce today's panelists. Tiffany Eddy is a communications specialist and founder of S3, Smart, Strong, Sassy, a hair care line that empowers women. She spent nearly 2 decades as a broadcast journalist focused on taking complex issues and synthesizing them into understandable concepts for a large audience. Tiffany has been honored with the prestigious Edward R. Murrow Award as a 3-time Emmy nominee, and her work has been recognized for excellence by 2 New Hampshire governors. Tiffany now works with clients on multiple platforms to assess their specific needs and then execute the best plan to communicate their message. Thank you, Tiffany.
Thank you very much.
Alex Horton is dedicated to enhancing and elevating the small business community in the greater Manchester area. She is the owner of Cafe Lorraine and Cafe Lorraine North Ends here in Manchester. She opened Cafe Lorraine in March of 2013 and is celebrating 10 years in business. The cafe has been awarded Best of New Hampshire numerous times and has been featured in publications throughout the state. Alex opened her second location, Cafe Lorraine North End, in 2022. In addition to operating her restaurants, Alex owns a consulting business, Horton Consulting LLC. She assists clients in business planning, operations, management, and sales. Alex serves on the Greater Manchester Chamber Board of Directors as a member of the Executive Committee and is a Manchester Transit Authority Commissioner. He graduated from Saint Anselm College in 2011 and participated in Leadership Greater Manchester class of 2016. She teaches weekly yoga and bar classes at Bar Life in Manchester and was recognized in the Union Leaders 40 Under 40 in 2015, WZID's Most Outstanding Woman in 2015, Manchester Young Professionals Young Professional of the Year in 2015, and Saint Anselm College's 10 Under 10 in 2017. Alex lives in Manchester with her husband Ben and her rescue dogs. Thank you, Alex, for being here today.
Thank you. How do you have time to be here today?
Our final panelist is Amy LaBelle. She is a winemaker, entrepreneur, author, and media personality. She's an international phenomenon with local roots in New Hampshire, but quickly growing across Boston and the Northeast area. As the co-owner of LaBelle Winery, her passion, commitment, and hard work have made Amy the lifestyle personality to watch in 2023. She not only produces award-winning wines, but she launched 2 wineries that have put New England on the wine map, quickly positioning her as a key player in the wine industry. Thank you for being here. And finally, today's moderator is Dr. Dina Frutos-Bencze. She's an associate professor of international business at Saint Anselm College. She has over 9 years of professional experience in human resources management in Europe and the US. Her most recent research has been focused on economic inequality, sustainable development, and entrepreneurial activity. Other research interests include economic integration, innovation, and the application of system dynamics modeling to international business. And I do want to say that we had another moderator scheduled to be here today, and last minute conflict came up. So Dina has offered to step in, so we are very grateful that she could be here.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. I'm honored and delighted to be here. I've briefly talked to our wonderful panelists. So the way we're going to run this is I do have a few questions. So we're going to have structured questions a little bit and go through each panelist, but then we're going to open it for open Q&A because I think their experience and expertise is what you probably want to definitely kind of get, hear about and get most out of it. So in no particular order, but maybe we can start with you, Alex. I know we had a brief introduction for each of you, but I was wondering if you can elaborate a little bit more, each of you, on the decision to take an entrepreneurial route in your life. I know you all had different paths, but maybe kind of that decision moment, or if you can elaborate on that, of doing that versus sitting in an office.
Yeah, so I went to Saint Anselm College for business. And when I started school here, I thought, oh, I want to work in corporate life. My dad had worked at Fidelity forever. And then they went through a bunch of layoffs. And I saw how that affected us and our family and kind of the instability of the corporate world. And I decided that I wanted to take my own path and open a business for myself. My grandfather had opened a business. He had a home inspection business that he opened in the 50s. And then some of my uncles had their own businesses as well in like real estate and property management. So they kind of inspired me to do that. But yeah, while I was here at St. A's, I took classes that interested me and also would kind of push me in that entrepreneurial path. I worked in so many family-run restaurants and cafes just to try to learn the business, learn how to order, learn how kitchens worked and all that, and coffee especially. So yeah, that's kind of how I ended up here.
So, okay, that came kind of naturally sounds, but we can
Kind of sort of, but
a
a lot of work.
Oh, I'm sure,
Yeah.
I'm sure. Tiffany, what about you?
Sure. Well, my pathway was I got out of college and I wanted to be a photographer. So my dream was to travel the world and to take photographs. And I loved, what I really loved was combining the written word with visual images. And so I ended up getting a job in news media because that's essentially what being a reporter, broadcast journalist is you're going out and interviewing people and combining what they say with the visual images. The problem was I was really, really, really bad. And I was terrified of being on camera and I was really afraid of public speaking. I should show you all my very first tape. Yeah, terrified. So I would get in front of the camera and literally like my heart would start going and I would start hyperventilating and I would be sweating profusely. And I remember like taking my very first tape home and my family was like, maybe you should think about being a lawyer or something like that. And I was so mad at myself and I was so mad at my body for like betraying me that I was like, okay, I'm going to stick with this until at least I get it. And then I'll figure out what I want to do. And by that time, I had a career in broadcast journalism, which was wonderful. I was in that medium for probably about 20 years, and it was wonderful. I got to travel around and interview all sorts of fascinating people. So it's not exactly a 9 to 5. Like if you're in broadcast media, you could be called in the middle of the night, or you're working nights and weekends. And so I loved doing what I was doing, but as Amy can talk about, but and I don't know if you, so I'm sorry, but I became a mom and that was just life-changing. And so I would go to work for maybe a 12 or 14-hour shift and I would leave my daughter and then son at home. And it was just for me, not the life that I wanted to continue living. So that's when I was thinking like, okay, well, what can I do where I can be the mom that I want to be and still have a career that's something that I'm passionate about. So that's when I made the decision to be an entrepreneur, and I started my own PR firm 11 years ago. And since then, you know, it's so funny, life takes so many different twists and turns. And a wise woman told me once, you might be trying to get from point A to point B, but you might have to go all over the place to get there. And some of those twists and turns can be really fulfilling and really unexpected yet wonderful, and you've got to be open to them. So I told you could just wind me up and I'll talk forever now. But believe it or not, for anybody who's afraid of public speaking, 20 years ago, if you could tell me 25 years ago, 30 years ago, I don't know, forget how old I am. Yeah, I would have never thought that this was possible.
Meanwhile, you were on WMUR broadcasting in front of, I don't know, 1 million people every day.
Yeah, it was true. No,
Might have been two,
a couple.
couple million. See?
But I have to tell you, so when I first came out of Channel 9, so Linda, who's not here, who was our wonderful organizer, but Linda Johnson had this panel, and it was the very first time that I met Amy. And I fell in love with Amy immediately, and I'm probably going to steal Amy's own words. Amy probably was going to tell this story, and I'm going to tell Amy's story, but
Oh, good that you can rest.
Amy was this wonderful example, and Amy was you were like already like a big deal back then, but this was 11 years ago. And I remember you were talking about how you sometimes didn't know what you were doing when you were a lawyer, and just the incredible courage that this woman had to really pivot to follow her dreams. And when she didn't know, she just kept barreling through. So I met Amy, and Amy inspired me to continue to be an entrepreneur. So.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
So yeah.
Oh, it's
tell
my
us
turn.
more then.
Cool. I hope I didn't
About
take
the
too much.
position.
No, I find both of these women incredibly inspiring as well. And we have to lift each other up, and we have to be there for each other to be helpful and to be inspiring. So that's great. So I kind of had similar elements in my story, except that I wasn't an entrepreneur right out of the gate. I will tell you that as a child, the way I played often was to create pretend businesses. So I think that was a little foreshadowing on my future. I would create a restaurant in my basement, and I still have one of those little menus. My restaurant was called the Wishing Well, if you want to know. And it was, I had, you know, when you were a child, you had those little plate sets that had groceries, plastic groceries, and then like grapes and bananas. That was the food my guests had to eat. And so it wasn't a great restaurant, but it was, but that's how I played. I would always create little businesses. And then when I wanted an Atari, this is going to date me, but when I wanted an Atari 2600, don't look up when that was invented. It's a gaming system. I promise it was really bad, but it was really, it was awesome at the time. I see what my kids have now and I'm like, whoa. Anyway, I wanted an Atari. My family had no money and I really wanted this thing, but it cost $120, which was a fortune. Trust me, in the 80s, that was an absolute fortune. And to me, it was certainly. So I created little business cards on an index card stack. I put stickers on it and I wrote what I would be willing to. I think I typed them, actually. I typed them on a typewriter. We also had those. Anyway, no computers. And I passed them out in the neighborhood. Like I'll do yard work, I'll do babysitting. I was always like willing to trade hard work for money. And that's still the case. I was out pruning in my vineyard all day today, working pretty hard, and I have 17 Band-Aids to show for it. In any event, I always kind of had this entrepreneurial spirit, but I took a corporate path first, and I was a lawyer. So I pushed through school and I studied hard and I got good grades and I got into law school. And I practiced law at a large law firm in Boston, and then eventually going in-house to Fidelity Investments. Maybe your dad and I crossed there, I don't know, probably. And I was at Fidelity for 12 years. And it wasn't until this is where like your element comes in. I finally met my poor husband, Caesar. And I told him I had this dream to open a winery. And that dream happened one day when I was traveling on vacation from my day job at Fidelity. I was traveling in Nova Scotia, Canada. I walked into a winery in Nova Scotia, not kind of Napa Valley. And it hit me like an absolute ton of bricks. I said, holy moly, I think this is supposed to be what I'm doing. I think I'm supposed to be a winemaker. And instantly I saw the whole vision for LaBelle Winery, restaurant, the event center, a place where the community would gather. And I felt it like deep in my core, you know, like it was like a lightning bolt had hit me. And I think that what is important from that story is to really listen to your heart and listen to the things that you feel strongly, because I think I had just taken the job at Fidelity. I think it would have been a very easy thing for me at that point to kind of push down this feeling I was having and say, oh, that's so silly. Like, I didn't know how to make wine, small details, you know, there's that. And so I think it would have been very easy for me to like brush it aside and say, that's stupid, stay the course. You've got a great job. I had a phenomenal job at Fidelity. I was like the youngest senior legal counsel they ever had. And I was, you know, on the move. Could have stayed there for my whole career, but I listened to that little voice that rose up and said, you're supposed to be a winemaker. And I followed it. And so from that day forward, well, it took me 4,083 days to open the doors of my flagship winery in Amherst, New Hampshire. And there was like something that I did every single day to push that dream forward. And so that's how my entrepreneurial journey was born.
Wow, wonderful. I mean, yeah, so you hear the stories are different, and I had a different question kind of following after this, but I think this hard work and the journey, I want to get deeper into, I guess, asking you about, you know, questions about your drive and your work ethic in a way, because I think all of you mentioned a little bit of this pushing through, you know, I don't know, I think how important, I mean, obviously it is important, but how would you place that work ethic within your journey? Like how, you know, determining maybe it was. Again, we can continue first with any of you.
Well, I'm gonna tee Amy up again, because you said something years ago that impacted me, but I remember you were talking about when you were a lawyer and you'd gotten a job in the big Boston firm when you first got out. And they're like, oh, can you do mergers and acquisitions? And then you could be like, what is that? I gotta look that up.
Yeah.
So that probably doesn't have anything to do with work, but I think it does have to do with working to find the solutions or working when you don't know what the answers are to try to get to them. So as far as work, I think if you're really passionate about it, you don't mind. It's not work. It's not a 4-letter word. It's a word that you know, you embrace the work because it's part of the fun. It's part of the challenge. It's what makes you want to get up every day. So when you're doing something that you're passionate about, and I've had a couple of different jobs in my lifetime, and I can attest that if you really enjoy what you do, it really doesn't feel like work. It feels like it's your purpose.
I would agree with that, but also it is a lot of work.
It is a lot of work.
Yeah, I mean, I went from having so I have 2 cafes. One is like a walk up, you know, you go to the counter, order your stuff, and then they call your name and all that. And then my second cafe that I opened last year is like a full blown brunch restaurant. And I have like almost 30 employees now. So I think that it just adds to the chaos, but you just have to be willing, you know, you just have to be willing to put the time in. And I mean, I think, and you can ask my husband if I set healthy boundaries, but I think I've started to set healthy boundaries around like where I stop working. Is that fair? So I think I've started to set healthy boundaries around like when I stop working.
How did you do
But
that?
That's fine.
I'm really
I mean,
bad at that.
honestly, bar and yoga helped me a lot because I sort of set that time for myself, like, okay, I'm gonna focus on teaching and like socializing, and then after that, I go home, make dinner. And yeah, and just have some downtime. So, but it took me years because usually I would just go home and like work through the night.
Right.
And it's hard not to because your business is your baby and you're trying to make sure that everything is running smoothly. But yeah, I think it's always a balance. Yeah, always a balance for sure. Yeah.
The thing about work for me, and I think probably for all of us, is that it is really hard and there are really hard things that you have to put your head down and grit through. So if there's anybody here that thinks that you can begin a business or begin a career in corporate, and that it's always going to be tulips and roses and la, 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 it's not. It's really hard. And there are some challenges that come up and I'm just like, are you kidding me? And I love what I do. And I love my business. And I'm so glad I started it. But there are still days when I want to like wrap my head against the wall and cannot give up in those days, whether you're an owner of a business or an employee. And so when my employees come to me, I have 250 employees and it's like bananas to manage that many people. And let me tell you, when they come to me and they tell me a problem as an employee, I'm like, no, thank you for letting me know that. Go back, think about it a little bit and come up with a solution or two and then come back to me. And then I can help you work through this, because unless you have like worked through it on your own, like I can't do that for you. You have to do that. So really just trying to get your head into that like problem solving mentality and that grit you need to build up as people to get through those moments. It's absolutely critical. It's not just for your job or your business, for your life. And I'll probably say something unpopular here. Don't write bad reviews or letters about this, but I think we've gotten a little soft in the past, maybe like 4 years or so. And I don't think COVID helped it. We just kind of don't know how to like grit through stuff anymore. I do, because I don't have any choice. I tried to quit yesterday, they didn't let me. So, yeah, is that unpopular?
No,
Are you seeing that in your
Yeah,
businesses?
I think this is great. Yes, we have students here, a lot of students, so I think this is wonderful to hear. I mean, many of you
It's a little
are
tricky.
getting ready, you know, some of you graduating. And when we open, I think the discussion to questions from students, I think it would be important. I mean, this is important, right? We're trying to prepare students for the workplace and have them ready, but sometimes just, as you said, you know, having that stamina or plowing through it, even if you don't know what you're doing, but like the drive to do it, even if it's not, you know, doesn't look like plausible or something like that. So I think hopefully some of you will ask and learn from these ladies about that. But yes, that brings me sort of to, and Alex, you alluded to that, but and all of you a little bit, the balance, right? The how to determine that balance between obviously working hard, your passion, and perhaps, you know, life. You were a mother, right? You had to make those choices and in a way balance that. I do think we talk about it in class, at least with my students, and I know that we emphasize that a lot. I mean, and younger generations have that in mind, right? The work-life balance is important. I don't think it was as strong maybe in my youth. That did not come to my mind, but so I'm wondering if, again, through time, how you found that balance. Are you still looking for it? Sometimes it's a perennial quest, right? So if you can elaborate a little bit on that, perhaps.
Yeah, I think like I said, it's always a struggle trying to find a balance between like work life and having fun. But I do think that putting the time into your business and building your own business allows you a different kind of flexibility, right? I mean, like we can kind of build our own schedules. You can build around your family. You can build around events that you have coming up to an extent. And you can, visit some nice places, go on vacations, just because you're not tied to that corporate, like you only have 2 weeks off in a year. And that's sort of what drew me to entrepreneurship as well, is the flexibility. Again, it's not always super flexible because you're, having a nice dinner somewhere and then your fridge breaks and you have to go running back to replace something. So that's a balance too, but I think that I would choose this life over working in corporate and having that kind of like parameters set for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And it can be a tough balance. Like I know I have taken vacations, but ended up, sending everybody out and you're in the hotel room on the computer because something's come up or you're on the phone. And so it's not the vacation that you were necessarily envisioning. But at least your loved ones are there and enjoying themselves and able to go out. You can see them like later on. But you know, when you're self-employed, you're in some ways you're always on the clock. Like it's you can't pretend that you didn't hear the phone ring and get back to it later. Things have to be addressed in a very quick manner, at least in my experience.
That's true. For me, like work-life balance, for me, work is life. You know, my business, I love growing my business. I love creating, I love making wine. I love creating menus for the restaurant. I love all of it, except for like a tiny little aspect, but most all of it I love. And the fact, so that makes it like, I don't do a lot of other things. I've made choices that way. I enjoy creating my business so much that I don't need to have like a hobby or something. I don't knit. I can, but I'm not really patient enough to do that. So, you know, I just love creating business. The thing that did help me gate my work hours, which is probably healthy, because otherwise I love it so much, I just do it all the time. But I do have a wonderful husband, so but although we're partners, so we would just be together at work all the time, so it's fine. And that would work fine for us. Maybe not you, I don't know. I won't put words in your mouth, but I do have 2 sons. And so when I got pregnant with Jackson, my first son, I said, that's it. It's time. I've got to put the pedal to the metal here. I've got to, by the time he's in kindergarten, and I was already like planning the winery. I was already learning how to make wine. I was already enrolled at UC Davis, but I said, pedal to the metal. I was at Fidelity. I was working on mergers and acquisitions. It was a very demanding job. It was a lot of hours and it wasn't my schedule at all. Like I did what they needed me to do all the time. And I didn't want to do that when I had the baby. So when Jackson was born, that gave me like, I said to him, I remember looking at his little face and saying, by the time you are going to kindergarten, I'm going to have this figured out and I'll be my own boss and then I'll work it out. And I have, and I did. I opened the winery in October of 2012, and that was his first year of kindergarten. So, I work more than when I worked at Fidelity, but I love it. And I can like work around my kids' schedule. So when they were really little, that meant like, yeah, I'd go to work during the day, but I could be home. I'm home. Even now I'm home almost every day when they get home from school. I put them on the bus every morning. I work hard while they're gone. But then after they go to bed, I might have to work a little more. And that's okay. I don't mind doing that. So you just kind of make it work. It's all integrated.
Right, make it work. So let me switch gears a little bit and talk about obstacles and how you, I guess it's part of the same theme, but how you overcome them. If you have any way, or just every problem is different, I guess we can tackle that part. But I'm also curious and interested in, for example, when you decided your winemaking business, you said you put yourself through winemaking school or UC Davis, right? So there's skills and knowledge that seem to be part of the equation. Alex, you also mentioned that you were working at restaurants. So once you knew what you wanted, you also found in a way how to learn it, right? What you needed. So was that kind of an obstacle for you, or that was part of the journey? And did that inform you in a way later, sort of how to perhaps, tackle obstacles, or if you want to talk about any other obstacles, in that theme, I would say preparation and obstacles. How do you approach that?
There are always obstacles. There's always 17 obstacles or mines, things to avoid, right? There's always stuff. I think the trick is not letting those obstacles slow you down or stop you. You have to drive through, you have to find the tenacity to figure it out and move forward. And it doesn't matter whether it's business or life. Again, this characteristic that you have to build, this muscle that you have to build. I mean, if you want to learn to be a motorcycle mechanic, you're going to have to figure that out. You're going to have to watch YouTube videos, or maybe volunteer somewhere, or get a motorcycle and break it down and put it back together. I don't know how to do that, but you would have to get through that obstacle. You don't know that, but you want to know it. So you've got to build that muscle of figuring it out. And that will serve you all so well as you move forward, whether it's in life or business.
I mean, I would agree. When I started S3, which started out more as my initial vision of it was more of a media platform where women shared their honest stories to help lift up and inspire other women, because for me, it was my storytelling roots. And so when I decided to start it, I was really good at PR, but it wasn't necessarily what was inspiring me at that point after leaving Channel 9. The problem is I'd never started anything like that before. And so I was putting a lot of work and a lot of effort into it, but I wasn't really able to monetize it. And I remember talking to a lot of people, and I guess this would be, something that I would recommend is, at least in my personal journey, people will give you all sorts of different advice, but I find it very helpful to just talk to people. So if there's, if Amy's around, I might want to talk through a problem with Amy and get her input, but it's okay to be honest. It's okay to say, I don't have all the answers. And when you're, I think when you're vulnerable, maybe a little bit vulnerable or honest, or, can be real and have that kind of open conversation with other people, you don't know what sort of doors are going to also be opened. So I remember talking to someone in the community about S3 and my dreams for it. And through the course of a couple of different conversations, that's when they were like, well, have you ever thought about products? And I was like, no, I never have thought about products. Would you ever be interested in doing hair products? I was like, well, why not? And so that's how it kind of ended up pivoting into not what my initial vision was, but it's still there. It's still a company that can empower, and still a company that's moving forward and providing value to women all over. So again, I go off on tangents and I don't know if that answered it. But there are always going to be obstacles. And I think you just can't personalize them. Like, why did this happen to me? Obstacles throw themselves in front of everybody. They're very tricky like that. So I think you just have to roll up your sleeves and try to work the problem.
It's your turn, but can I jump off on that for 1 second?
Yeah.
One obstacle I had when I was trying to get funding to build LaBelle Winery, I needed $5.3 million to build my dream place. It was a lot of money to ask for in 2010. Four banks denied me. And so what I want to say is, though, that was an obstacle, right? I didn't have the money, I didn't have the funding. And you would think that after 4 banks told me no, I might have said, maybe this is not such a great idea. But what I did was I looked, instead of saying, oh, woe is me, oh, they never give women any money, which is true. Oh, it sucks to be me. I guess I'll have to stay at my corporate job forever. I didn't do the victim thing. I instead looked inward and I said, you know what? You haven't done a good job, Amy, of writing a business plan that these people can get behind. So I looked inward and I redid my whole presentation. I redid the numbers. I redid it so they could see that I was going to make it work no matter what. And then the 5th bank gave me the money. So you've got to be careful about that victim mentality. You have to work it out yourself. You are in control. You can be a motorcycle mechanic. You can get the bank to give you the money. You just have to want it and want to do that work.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I'm gonna jump off both of your points. That was amazing. I agree with you, because I was also denied by a bunch of banks, both times.
Yep.
And it's ridiculous, because I do feel like, and I've never liked, back then, 10 years ago, I never liked to say like, oh, it's because I'm a woman, but it does have something to do with it. Just a bit, yeah. But again, same as you, I went back, rewrote my plan, changed my presentation, tried some other way to present the data, and eventually you get a yes, but you just have to keep at it. So
Isn't it fun when you run into those
it
bankers
is-
now?
it is.
I run into those guys at events at the winery now, and I'm
Yeah.
like, hey,
Thank you.
it worked out.
Yeah, for sure. It sounds funny.
One of them actually apologized to me finally. It was great. He was like, oh, no.
I love that.
Yeah.
And then to your point, I've always, I mean, we face so many obstacles, but I've always recognized that I don't know everything. And I've always asked other people for help. So I've called lawyers, accountants, my dad, my uncles, my cousins, like whoever is around, my husband, like my sisters who are also entrepreneurs. Like it's just really important to surround yourself with people who are in the, interested in, like you said at the beginning, lifting each other up and helping each other out, because we're kind of all in this entrepreneur life together, and we have to support each other. So, yeah.
And that's a mistake I made, really. That's a mistake, a big mistake that I made early in my career, when I was a lawyer and even now. Because when I was early on, I didn't feel like I could ask a question or ask for help, because I was worried people would think I was stupid and couldn't handle it. So I would just figure it out. I think I could have gone a lot faster and a lot further quicker if I would have just asked, because guess what? People really do want to help. They want to help. And any one of you that will call me and ask me for help, I will help you. And I will help we will help, as long as you're willing to do the work.
And I think one more thing on obstacles, though, to probably both of you, although I know Amy's story a little bit better, but you think about COVID and being in the hospitality business during COVID. And I know you and I had spoken during COVID, but kudos to Amy, because you think about, not only did you worked with your business so that it survived, but it thrived, and then you opened up a whole different facility in Derry during COVID, or right on the tail end of COVID.
That was a good idea.
And you're obviously doing really well, but COVID was so devastating to the hospitality industry in particular. I know it impacted what I was doing, but talk about a major obstacle. But I was always impressed with you, but recently, girl crush, but recently, just with how you were able to adapt and manage COVID and come out, bigger and better than before.
Thank you. That's very kind. I think COVID presented an opportunity. It was devastating and horrible for like a minute, but I didn't have longer than that to dwell on it. I had to find a plan to get my business to survive. So within 5 days, we had launched a family meal program that served our community at a good value, a to-go business. Like, that wasn't what I do. That isn't what we did. But I had, people from random departments like HR packing meals to go for families. We just made it work. I laid off 90 people that day, that very first day, and it was devastating. And it was a terrifying time for sure. But we took it as an opportunity to get stronger, to make our team stronger. And the result was that my team was really stronger than ever after COVID, because we banded together so hard to save the business. And I will forever be grateful to those people. They just killed it. And it was something to see. And so coming out of that, we all got this like confidence. We were like, well, we just survived COVID with a hospitality business. We can do anything. So we bought another facility. And now we're like, oh my gosh, what were we thinking? No, everything's fine. You're in the same spot.
Yeah, very similar, because at the, restaurants, like you said, cry for a minute, and then you have to just figure it out and make sure that you're taking care of your people, like your staff and your customers and all that. And we just did takeout forever. For a year, and then finally opened inside, but then other restaurants unfortunately didn't make it through, and we found a second location at the end of that. So yeah, making our lives way more difficult. But it's just
silver lining.
Yeah, silver lining for sure. But
This panel is great. It's making my life super easy, because COVID was going to be one of my questions.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, that's wonderful. But yeah, so that you talked about networking, right? How important it is networking, and also, this community element. So kind of two questions here. Resources in terms of networking, you said ask. So would you have recommendations for people here or students, like who to ask, what resources you have in the neighborhood or in New Hampshire, or anyone, not only women, in terms of networking and getting help? So that's one thing. And also the connection with the community, because I think that is sort of a feedback loop that I sense that you all have in your lives, in your business and the community. So kind of resources that people can tap into and that you've used in the state or anywhere else, or who to ask, how to approach people. If you have any advice for students or anyone here, maybe we begin with you.
You have to go to everything and meet everybody and make those connections with them and follow up with them, send them an email, say, it's great to meet you, if it was great to meet you. don't have to fail. But great to meet you. I'd love to stay connected. I hope to see you at another event, soon, and you just build those relationships. They're so important, but you start with the people around you now. These college relationships that you're forming, they'll last a lifetime. And when you have the motorcycle empire, somebody here might, I'm sorry, I'm picking on you. You might be a motorcycle mechanic already, I don't know. But, you never know who you're meeting in your circle, and you want to keep those people close to you. But I think getting involved in your community is one of the really, really strong ways to do that. And so at LaBelle Winery, for example, we help over 200 charities a year in little tiny ways and in big ways. And that charitable component of my business is a really deep core of LaBelle Winery. It's really important to us, but it also allows me to meet so many cool people who are doing like the good work, God's work in the community, all the good stuff. And I, keep in touch with all of them. And over the time, your community will just build and build and build.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it's so important to be out there, be networking, and I think to your point, even here on campus among students and faculty. When I decided I wanted to leave Channel 9 and do a career change, I made a list of people in the community who I thought were really interesting and doing good things, and I reached out to them. And some of these people I didn't know. I did have a little advantage that at that time I was on TV, so they could at least turn on and say, okay, I know what she looks like. But I would reach out cold and say, hey, would you grab coffee with me? Could we sit down and have a conversation? I'm trying to figure out my next move, and I would really appreciate your advice. And I think reaching out to 10 people, like 9 of them took the meeting, and lots of them are my really good friends to this day. So they've been super helpful along the way, and I'm very fortunate that they're not just colleagues, they're also friends. Giving back to the community, I think, is just something that's just so important on so many levels. You guys probably would agree, but I get back so much more when I participate in different charitable events. So I'm gonna give a shout out to the Boys and Girls Club. We had our Foundation of Friends breakfast this morning, and I just joined the board. I think you were there.
No, I was supposed to be, I sent us a.
But I get so much back from participating in those events that just kind of warms your soul and makes you remember what's really important in life. So they are wonderful places to network and connect. But I think, I'm going to speak for everybody in this room. We've all been given, many gifts, and we're very fortunate to just be here. And so I think it's incumbent upon us to give a little bit back.
Mm-hmm, for sure. Coming from Saint Anselm, I know that you have a sense of volunteering in your community already instilled in you. So I kind of took that with me, and I continued volunteering. I volunteered at New Horizons, Families in Transition, the Manchester Animal Shelter, which was super fun because we met our dog Keith there. But then just getting involved in small ways. So Manchester Young Professionals is a really great way to start getting involved, like right out of school. It's a network of young professionals. It's really, low risk networking with your peers, which is a good way to get out there and start talking to people and making those connections. And then over time, I just started getting more interested in serving my community in other ways, like the Transit Authority Commission, which is something I knew nothing about when I joined it, but now I know a lot about school buses and transit in the city, which is kind of cool to be involved in that. And then the Chamber, of course, and some other organizations. It's just, like you're both saying, it's just like a really nice way to stay connected and to stay in touch with people who you need to, help support you in your business and in your journey. So, yeah.
Did either of you do Leadership New Hampshire?
I did.
Manchester.
I want to do that too. Let's apply together. Let's talk together. Yeah. All right. Leadership New Hampshire, I'll give a plug for, because I think that's phenomenal.
I've heard about it. Yeah, so if you could.
I didn't go through it yet, so I don't have all the details, but Leadership New Hampshire is a program you apply to, and it's a year-long program, and they take you through different sectors of business in the state of New Hampshire, and they just kind of teach you how New Hampshire works. Awesome like time for you to learn everything about New Hampshire and the communities around you.
So I think I'm gonna have the last structured question before we open it up to the audience to ask. And so basically it is more like, I'd like to ask you, what would you like the attendees to know about being an entrepreneur? And what qualities it takes to be one and a successful one? Kind of like a summary of this, what what are the qualities? What would you be your top qualities?
I think being resilient, it's kind of, what we've been talking about up here. Yeah, I just think being resilient and being willing to work with your staff and work with other people. And just, I've always just been interested in fostering that sense of community with my businesses, welcoming everyone as customers, as staff. Resilience, community.
I would agree with that. I would add maybe creativity. So to be able to maybe look at things a little bit differently and take a different angle. So I think creativity is always helpful for any entrepreneur to be able to see things maybe not in the traditional way. I think both of you guys obviously are both very creative, and being creative can be fun.
Yes. I think to those, I would add that you have to be a hopeful person, and kind of an optimist, because it will beat you down a little bit here and there. And so you have to have that ability to say, okay, tomorrow will be better. And it usually is.
Yeah, don't let anyone kill your dreams.
No. No.
Great, yeah, I think I've heard, I would add, if I may add, I'm not an entrepreneur, but I think you mentioned it earlier, and that is self-knowledge, right? You said you've got to know your thresholds and kind of, where you stand. Maybe quoting you incorrectly, but you did say something along those lines that is also important. But kind of as an entrepreneur, I guess qualities are that. So thank you for being here and for answering my questions. But we are going to open it now then for questions from the audience. And I guess we don't have microphones, you'll have to stand up, I guess, and try to be loud. It's not such a big room, but go ahead.
Oh, I have so much I want to say. You guys are wonderful, you're very inspiring. And I want to say that I'm one of those commercial bankers. But actually, that's why I'm here, is because I do want to speak on behalf of commercial lending, that I'm fighting for you all women. I really
Thank
fight
you.
for you every single day. Unfortunately, the commercial lending world really for centuries been really brought up by men, and it took a long time for women to get really involved in business and fight for their right to be there and to be standing where you guys are. It's been a hard journey, and I started at my current job 8 years ago, and it really has progressed. And when I see something funny that doesn't look right, I'm the first one to speak up and say, why are you saying that about that particular loan? What's your reasoning behind that? Because I get pissed.
Yeah.
If I think that there's a reason behind some of these decision makers not going in the direction that they should be going, in my opinion. But I do want to say I met you, Amy, when I was at a different bank, and it wasn't, we never got that far. I never got to take that full application with you, because by the time I saw you, you were already were in the process of getting your approval. You were right there, and I remember following up with you saying, okay, you're going to be giving me your application and all this stuff, and you said, well, you already just got approved. And so I didn't have to go that far, but I remember when you were at your house with the winery.
Oh
I
my
was there with
gosh.
you in your driveway.
It was a million years ago.
Yes, it was. Yes, it
Thank
was.
you.
Yes.
I appreciate you.
Yes, well, I tried, but I think that where I was at that point in time, probably that particular place would have denied you as well. Because
Yes, I have no
one of the
doubt.
reasons why I left.
I have no
But,
doubt.
we're here, I'm here just to say that, there is avenues for money in this world of entrepreneurship. Small business lending, the SBA, Small Business Association, was created to help businesses grow and to start. There's a lot of programs out there to help people with business plans, to get things going. There's people that do it for volunteer in the SCORE. It's called SCORE, if you ever want to look that up.
Oh, yeah,
It's through the SBA.
that's an awesome program.
It is. But then there's the, in New Hampshire at UNH, they have programs there. There's a lot of different programs out there to help people get going with their dreams and their passions and to make it all work. And if you can find, I currently work for a credit union. And we do small business lending all day long. And we love new business. You know, it's the risk and the reward, right? So when we're giving out money, there's high risk at that. So we really do want to see a business plan. It doesn't have to be a 10-page business plan, but we want to feel that you know what you're doing and that you know where your money's going to come from. And then we're looking for collateral, because if it doesn't work, and as you may already know, the restaurant industry is a high risk industry. It's one of the highest risk industries for a lender to give money to. When I was at my other bank, you had to have been experienced for 7 years before they would give you a loan if you were in the restaurant industry. 7 years.
And how do you get that experience if you can't get the loan?
I know, I understand, but
But
it's come a long way.
The moral to that story for the young ones in the room is save your money.
Yes,
And pay down your debt and don't accrue debt if you can help it,
absolutely,
because you have to have some money in the bank to back up
Absolutely.
your request.
absolutely. But if anyone ever wants to talk about that with me today, I'll stay afterwards and be happy to talk to you.
Thank you.
By the way, my name is Christine Malloy.
Thank you.
Yes, go
I
ahead.
kind of have like an advice question. Growing up, I had like social media pages and I sold like so much stuff, but I was so all over the place and like my brain was going crazy. How do I pick like one thing and like get myself to stay on one track? Even though obviously you go around and getting to that point B is like you go like crazy, but how do you like get yourself to stay?
Do you
To
have to do
choose-
that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't, I have two different restaurants that they're a little bit different from one another. I'm gonna start roasting my own coffee. I teach yoga, I teach bar, I consult. I think that if you're passionate about something, anything, 5 things, like you can put as much time and energy into them as you want. But if you feel like there's one thing that's kind of like nagging, like this isn't worth my time, then maybe that's the thing that you should kind of leave for
Yeah.
someone else. Yeah.
You're young, so what do you like doing the best? What's your favorite?
I mean, right now I just got a job at Pliables, like at the beginning of school. It's like acai bowls. I don't know. I love it, but I also love like selling clothes. I like making stuff. Like I would do dupes of like if you've heard of Aviator Nation. Like
That's cool.
I would make clothes so it like looked exactly like it and then I'd sell it. But I
Nice.
Oh, I
So-
can hire you.
I know, right?
but I also do like love
I get a job for you.
I'm also in the Women of Business Club and I'm the PR coordinator and I love like posting and marketing stuff too. So I don't know if I want to go in that field or it's like
So,
I feel like I'm going crazy.
my advice to you is that you're young and now is your time to explore all of it and to see what grabs your heart the most. Now, having said that, numbers tell a story. If you're going to own your own business, you cannot say, oh, I'm not good at math. You have to own the numbers. You've got to figure that part out. And so I would say that for anything that you're interested in, maybe developing into a business, or maybe there's 8 things, who knows? Write a little business plan for each of them and just see, go on score.org, which is the website that Christine referenced. Christine?
Yeah.
They have templates, so you can figure, they have like, you can just plug in the numbers, it's already built for you. You can figure out your break-even analysis, you can figure out your pro forma, like how does it work at its base? Like, oh, if I wanted to have, say you want to have a social media consulting firm. Well, how many clients would you need to fund your lifestyle? And, you know, it kind of would help you guide you in if the numbers for that particular thing you're interested in work. The other thing to think about is like my LaBelle winery has kind of this overarching hospitality umbrella, but in it, I have a golf course, I have 2 wineries, a champagne house, 2 restaurants, 2 event centers, 3, a market, a French market, they're all under that umbrella. So they just kind of have that common theme of excellent service, excellent quality products, And so maybe that's your theme, like excellence, you know, it can, you can kind of make it be your own.
Thank you.
Great question. Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
So, yeah, and if I could just add one thing to that, don't forget competitive analysis. Because sometimes, you know, you can have an easier path than you might otherwise have. If you have two great choices, one clearly has less competition. But I think my question is
Absolutely.
probably, what's that?
Absolutely.
I think maybe my question was probably more for Alex and Amy. You know, as an entrepreneur, you're developing a business. And it's easy to just focus on the small incremental improvements. But both of you clearly reached a point where you said, all right, let's make this big jump and open up a second location. Or maybe it's a new product line or whatnot, right? You both did new locations. What were some of the things that you felt that made you feel comfortable doing that?
I would say in the numbers, you know, it's all in the numbers at that point in time. So I do my own books. I've always done my own books because I like to have a really good handle on what's going on in my business. And we actually started looking at second locations before COVID. But obviously, you know, the last few years were not like the ideal time to be looking for a second location. And once I saw that my business had so I will say this on restaurants. Restaurants don't typically break even within the first year, but downtown Manchester was seriously lacking in coffee shops, places for people, students to go and work. And we broke even in like 6 months. We started breaking even. So that was a pretty good sign to me that Manchester could support another coffee, brunch, breakfast-based restaurant like that. And then in choosing my second location, the area that it's in the north end of Manchester, and there aren't two, so it's located in a space where there was a breakfast restaurant. It had closed during COVID, so we opened in the same spot, and no one else had really opened in that area. So like you said, competition wise, it seemed like the right fit, and it's going really well. We're 6 months in and we're getting close, so it's great. I hope that answered the question.
Oh, me. So you have to know your numbers, of course, and that's, you know, gives you the comfort that, oh, the numbers tell the story, like, is it time, is it not? But, you know, in my industry, you know, to create a winery in New England, which really isn't a common business model, competitive analysis, there really wasn't anything competing with. So I was like kind of creating an industry and a brand at the same time. It was, I don't know what gave me the, but to do all that, but that's what I did. And I think it was just knowing that I'd be so unique at the time that I might be able to gain enough interest from people. And again, the quality, you know, you've got to get your reputation right from the beginning. So knowing that I would always produce better quality than people expected was really important to me. And I think that, you know, maintaining that through the years has been one thing that's helped my brand grow and given me comfort that it will continue to do so.
Can I
Couple
ask one
more
more question?
questions? Yes, and then don't forget we have networking time later. But
Yeah.
yes, go ahead.
I just was wondering, I too am a new entrepreneur. I would love to know what your advice for new people joining this world is on the word failure and perfectionism. Yeah.
What did they say? Perfection is the enemy of. Yeah, we can all get hung up on, I can't let this go yet because it's not perfect, and tinker with it, tinker with it, and tinker with it. And I know from my own experience, sometimes it's just an excuse because you're afraid to put something out there. So it's like a mental trick of, okay, well, it's not perfect yet. I need to work on it a little bit more. But you'd be better off just moving forward and maybe collaborating with other people, understanding that nothing is ever going to be perfect. I think seeking out perfection is just, it's not necessarily obviously you want something that's of exceptional quality, but nothing's ever gonna be perfect, so you have to know where to draw the line. That would be my advice on perfection, and I forgot the other part of
Failure.
failure. Oh my goodness, done it so many times.
Yeah.
And that's how we learn, and we would talk about embrace failure and fail forward, and it's not glamorous. And certainly nobody loves to fail, but it does serve value. And as long as you can learn from failure and figure out how to do it better the next time, then I think it can be instrumental to helping your growth and your business's growth.
Absolutely. Ditto. I think sometimes there's just so much work to do. For me, I know that I can't turn in A+ work every day. Sometimes it's B+, and that's okay. I've kind of just gotten okay with that. I do my best. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, now Tiffany, I know you pivoted, you did a few different things, you did consulting and now you're doing hair stuff. How did that financially? I'm just wondering, did you have the same road as the other ladies? Did you have a business plan? And with those insecurities of kind of shifting? And I'm also curious, certainly there are loans out there, but what about, grants for women? Is that not something that's really available, or is it not in our area, or is it impossible to get? So just curious about that whole financial kind of insecurity piece.
My path's probably a little bit different, and I still have my own PR firm, so right now, that's probably where most of my income comes from, and that is still growing. We're actually expanding, and it's funny how life has weird, you just don't know what's coming down the road, but my PR firm has always been kind of a small boutique, and I wanted it to be that way because I really wanted to be able to have a couple of good clients, but be around for my kids. And so I didn't want to take on too much and miss out on the important things that were taking place because they were young, which is the reason why I ultimately made the decision to leave the broadcast media. So my PR firm has been growing. And then when the hair product company came, that's a unique partnership with somebody. So they do the manufacturing, so they have more of the financial risk on that than I do. I'm more of the PR marketer licensing agreement with them. So that's probably my pathway is a little bit different than these ladies. But I have heard of grants. I am looking at one somebody forwarded to me because I would love to hire a social media person to help me because I just have too much on my plate and I can't get everything done. And that's the other thing I would tell everyone is that it's okay to ask for help, and there's just only so many hours in the day. So I know I need help. So if anybody's looking for a job, perhaps I'm trying to find somebody to come into my office. But it's okay to get assistance.
absolutely. Sounds like you should start your social media company today.
As far as grants go, I don't think,
Oh, grants.
yeah, I don't think there are any. Most of the grants are for nonprofits, I think. I mean,
There's
it's been
some
a while
stuff-
since I've looked into it, but
Like a little bit of stuff for women, but grant applications are writing a grant application is apparently very time consuming. And there are a lot of hoops to jump through. I don't, if there are grants available, let's put it this way. We don't know about them. But I think they're out there. I just don't even know where to look.
I mean, as far as funding, you could get a loan from a bank, like a private loan. I've done SBA loans, I've done lines of credit, like there are lots of options out there. But I think grants are just something else entirely for a
And
different industry.
There
Not
are
really-
some marketing firms that specialize in grant writing, so if you can hire somebody to help you find those and get that done, that's something to consider outsourcing.
Thank you. That's a great idea. We'll have one last question and then please stay. I mean, I'm saying like the formal part, the Q&A is gonna be done in this format, but we're staying here. We have the room till 7 and we have wonderful food. So I hope you stay. We're just gonna stand up, but go ahead with your question.
Hi, I'm Dina LaBelle. I'm a corporate lawyer, and I wanted to jump in and say there are other sources of funding that don't involve banks, and they involve investors. There are lawyers out there who can support entrepreneurs, especially women. I love working with entrepreneurs, and I would love to work with more women entrepreneurs. because many of the firm's clients where I work happen to be men. And I think that there are so many women out there who need great advisors and to get on their feet, and I'm making a push to try to make the firm more accessible to those who are starting businesses, because you don't always have to go to a bank, not to knock banks. But there are other people out there who have huge sources of capital who are ready to invest in businesses, and they're looking to invest with women and all different types of people who might not be the traditional male entrepreneur out there, and that's exciting for a lot of investors. So, yeah,
Well, so I just want to say, because I have students here, so if you are students here, I had somewhere a notepad where you should sign. And I know that you had other things, but for the rest or whoever can stay here, please stay. And well, I want to conclude this portion, this more structured portion, with a round of applause and really, I'm grateful. Thank you so much for your time and for being here. I mean, obviously, I'm so happy you're here, because I know every hour of your time is important. I mean, for everyone, but I mean, particularly with the amazing things you do. So I'm very grateful that you were able to share your experience here with our audience.